Good afternoon and welcome back to Dr. Logic awkwardly does logic in her kitchen. In the previous video, I talked about the ways in which you can have a fallacious mark, where something goes wrong with the hetu in your three-step argument. These pseudo-justifications are the reason why you can have something that looks like it meets the formal requirements of a three-step argument, but is still not yet a good argument. So the three-step form is necessary, but it's not sufficient. So Vasubandhu identified these three different types of pseudo-justifications, things that look like they are giving you a warrant, but don't actually. His next purpose then was to figure out, well, how do we identify the good marks, the good hetus, so that we can exclude the pseudo-justifications from our arguments? And that is what we're going to talk about in this video. So Vasubandhu identified three characteristics of a good mark, of a hetu that is not a pseudo-justification. And this is something that is called the Trairūpya-Hetu. So the three characteristics of a good mark. The first is that the hetu must occur in the paksha. So it has to actually, the ground property has to actually be present in the subject in order for it to be used to establish the presence of the target property. Second, the hetu must occur in similar examples. So what is meant here is that there have to be other examples that have both the ground property and the target property. So we can gloss this, i.e., in examples which have the sadhya. So that is a positive statement. It has to occur. There have to be other kind of instances of the hetu and the sadhya occurring together. But then we have our third characteristic of a good hetu is a negative one. So the hetu must also not occur in dissimilar examples, i.e., ones that don't have the sadhya. So don't have the sadhya. So if you have a hetu that meets all three of these, then you're going to have a good hetu. It's going to exclude the uncertainty case, the not established case, the self-contradictory case. So this means that we don't have to worry about pseudo-justifications if we can ensure that each one of these characteristics of the Trairūpya-Hetu is met. Now, the first one is already included in our three-step argument. It just is the statement of the ground. So if you have a false grounding statement, then of course you're not going to have a good argument. The premise, the statements in the three steps all need to be actually true. The second characteristic, that it must occur in similar examples, we've actually seen this already incorporated into some of the examples we've looked at. For instance, when I say that sound is non-eternal because it is produced by effort, like a pot. So there is a positive example of where both the hetu and the sadhya occur together. We have something that is both non-eternal and produced by effort. The negative case that it does not occur in dissimilar examples is something that you need to check. It's not something that is made explicit through the statement of the three-step argument, either explicitly in one of the steps or by adding an example as we did with the positive concomitants. But once you have checked all of these, if all of these characteristics are met, then you have a good argument. So if you think back to the two arguments that I gave you, both of which met the three-step format, but one of which was clearly bad, well, it failed on two accounts. First of all, the hetu didn't actually occur in the paksha. This little guy was not made in outer space. He was probably made in a factory somewhere. But also, the hetu must occur in similar examples. So I would need to establish that there were other things out in outer space that also had brains. Now, they may exist, I'm not going to say yes or no, but that concomitance between these two properties needs to be established before I can rely on it to make an inference about this particular guy. So this is one of Vasubandhu's, like, I don't want to say key contributions to the study of logic, because he did so much more than that. But this was a very important contribution. The fact that he was able to kind of articulate what the three-step argument form looks like, point out the fact that it's necessary, not sufficient, and then identify characteristics of the hetu that are necessary, that must be met. And if you have these two things together, each of these individually necessary things, they are jointly sufficient to give you a good argument. So much for our whistle-stop tour through Vasubandhu. We're going to look at historical developments after him and ways in which this three-step process plus the Trairūpya-Hetu was developed and expanded and it made even more precise, even more formal, and all sorts of interesting things like that. So join me then. Take care. Cheers.